going out there from the media that you are just a racist if you don't like Ironheart. The reason it's getting this backlash, the reason it's getting bad reviews, the reason that fans don't like what they see, it's just because all the damn racists out there, Jay. It's MAGA trolls, it's racist.
One major development that is now active involves drama surrounding Robert Downey Jr. in the midst of the Ironheart ratings nightmare. Now, already Robert Downey Jr. is enraged with both Disney and Marvel, as well as Marvel fans. Already Bob Iger and Kevin Feige held a recent emergency call/meeting that included Robert Downey Jr. remotely, where they were pressuring him to make a wide statement to Marvel fans to stop criticizing Riri Williams.
Disney is collapsing in real time, and the man once hailed as its savior might actually be the one driving it into the ground. Bob Iger was supposed to be the comeback king. When he returned as Disney CEO in late 2022, fans, investors, and even critics hoped he'd turn things around. After all, this was the guy behind Disney's olden acquisitions: Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and Fox. But fast forward to 2025, and Iger's legacy is facing a brutal rewrite.
Does it defy the haters, or is it another skippable series? It's always about you, right? It's always about the audience. It's amazing. It doesn't matter if it's the 2024 election or whether it's a Disney streaming product. It's always about like how evil is the actual voters? How evil are the audience?
Ratings are down. Box office flops are stacking up. Fan trust, practically non-existent. And now, a new wave of massive layoffs is sweeping across Disney's most beloved brands, including Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and even Disney+. But here's the real kicker. Iger isn't just cutting costs. He's cutting deep. And according to insiders, these firings aren't about efficiency. They're about survival. So what happened? Why is Disney slashing thousands of jobs in what insiders are calling a desperate pivot? And is Bob Iger truly trying to save the company, or just buying time for a graceful exit before stepping down in 2026?
It's very safe to say at this point that Bob Iger is by far the worst Disney CEO of all time, based on how he handled multiple ratings disasters and box office failures when it came to movies and television shows. When you really bundle that all together, they have lost billions of dollars in the process for 7, 8, 9 years now. But when you're looking at the overall scenario, what happened with Snow White, what happened with the Acolyte series for Star Wars and Lucasfilm, and especially with the Ironheart series most recently, that's just to name a few, by the way. Those are real big examples of exactly how Bob Iger really doubled down on the typical DEI agenda to please the top 3 shareholders, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Well, just recently Bob Iger made a very swift move, a move that I actually feel is a negative one.
In this video, we're breaking down everything. The real reasons behind the layoffs, how Disney's top 3 shareholders may be shaping the company's creative direction, and why some believe Iger is leading Disney into its most dangerous era yet. Strap in, because what's happening behind closed doors at Disney might shock you. Bob Iger's original run as Disney CEO was hailed as one of the most successful in entertainment history. Under his leadership, Disney became a pop culture powerhouse, acquiring Pixar, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, and 21st Century Fox. These moves gave Disney unprecedented control over Hollywood's biggest franchises. From Avengers Endgame to The Force Awakens, the company dominated the box office for over a decade.
Where Downey Jr. pointed out to both Marvel and Disney that this could not only ruin his reputation, but also cost him fans, and he's against making those statements. However, both Bob and Kevin informed him that taking part in these types of statements and the press tour for Ironheart is built into his very expensive contract for the future of the MCU, mostly related to the return in Avengers Doomsday. RDJ is already challenging both Bob Iger and Kevin Feige that he will only make statements defending Ironheart and Riri Williams if it avoids arguments about DEI.
Investors were thrilled, fans were engaged, and Iger's legacy seemed untouchable. But that legacy is now unraveling. Since Iger's return in late 2022, the been few and far between. Disney has faced one ratings and box office disaster after another. Projects like The Marvels, The Acolyte, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Remakes like Snow White have either flopped or stirred massive backlash. Longtime fans are tuning out, accusing the company of pushing identity politics over storytelling, while investors are questioning Iger's priorities and spending habits. Worse, the once promising Disney Plus platform has turned into a money pit. Billions were poured into original content, but subscriber growth stalled and profitability became a fantasy. Now, Iger is trying to clean up the mess he helped create, but his solutions, mass layoffs, budget cuts, and reduced production scales, may be doing more harm than good.
What's going on with the firings situation between Bob Iger and the many employees associated with the Walt Disney Company, with the Walt Disney Company dealing with serious consequences as a result of Bob Iger's DEI agenda and ongoing box office failures and ratings disasters? One major development going on now involves more to do with Disney CEO Bob Iger and how he recently decided to fire thousands of employees yet again, much like how he did this back in the end of 2023 into early 2024, as you guys may recall.
What started as a comeback has quickly become a cautionary tale. A central debate surrounding Disney's recent decline centers on one polarizing question: is the company collapsing under the weight of a woke agent? Or is it simply suffering from unchecked financial mismanagement and creative stagnation? Many critics, particularly online commentators, argue that Disney's push for diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, has diluted the storytelling in its most iconic franchises. They point to projects like The Acolyte, Snow White 2025, and Ironheart as examples of identity-driven content that prioritized messaging over quality. However, others argue that the real culprit isn't ideology, it's bloated budgets, poor leadership decisions, and weak scripts.
Daredevil was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. So, and that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't matched that.
Films like The Marvels and Indiana Jones 5 failed not necessarily because of diverse casting or inclusive themes, but because of convoluted plots, underdeveloped characters, and franchise fatigue. Disney spent hundreds of millions on productions and marketing, with little return, leading to massive losses. It's also important to note that many of these projects were greenlit under Bob Iger's watch, not his successor Bob Chapek. The overfunding of live-action remakes and streaming series wasn't just a political choice. It was a strategic gamble that didn't pay off. Meanwhile, Iger's alignment with major shareholders like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street has fueled speculation that corporate pressure, not consumer demand, is steering the creative ship. Ultimately, whether it's ideology or incompetence or a mix of both, Disney is paying the price. And the cost isn't just in dollars, it's in brand trust. Disney's cost containment strategy under Bob Iger has entered a brutal new phase, one defined by widespread layoffs, downsized productions, and shrinking morale across the company. While trimming costs is not unusual during turbulent economic times, the scale and focus of these layoffs have raised serious concerns about the company's creative future. Between 2025 and 2026, Disney is set to lay off between 2,200 and 2,500 employees across divisions like Pixar, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, Disney Plus, and even the company's theme parks. Rather than targeting upper-level executives or underperforming leadership, Iger's plan has instead gutted the very teams responsible for Disney's creative engine: writers, editors, marketing staff, and production crews. These are the people who shape the voice of a franchise, who market its identity, and who build trust with audiences. Eliminating them may help the quarterly bottom line, but it risks long-term creative stagnation. Pixar, once the crown jewel of Disney's innovation, is reportedly facing some of the deepest cuts, largely in response to Elio's poor box office performance. Meanwhile, Disney Plus teams responsible for promoting and managing original content are being disbanded or reduced. Marvel and Lucasfilm are also feeling the squeeze, forced to scale down projects into smaller productions, a move that may compromise quality and scope. In the name of efficiency, Disney may be severing the very roots of its storytelling legacy. What remains could be a skeleton crew expected to produce blockbusters with half the resources and none of the institutional momentum. If the magic is fading, it's not hard to see why. At the core of Disney's recent upheaval lies a deep and growing tension between creative vision and shareholder interests. Bob Iger's leadership in recent years has been shaped less by bold innovation and more by reactionary moves aimed at satisfying the demands of Disney's top institutional investors, namely BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. These financial giants, with enormous stakes in the company, have reportedly been influential in pushing for initiatives rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. While these values are important, their implementation has in many cases felt forced, performative, and disconnected from audience preferences. The result? A tangled strategy that's alienated longtime fans without winning over enough new ones. Projects that appeared more focused on hitting quotas than telling compelling stories, like Snow White or The Acolyte, failed to resonate, both critically and commercially. Meanwhile, the boardroom has become a battleground, with some directors staunchly backing Iger's decisions, while others quietly question the direction Disney is headed. This internal divide has led to inconsistent messaging, confused priorities, and a growing perception that Disney is no longer in control of its own creative destiny. Instead of steering confidently into a future shaped by innovation, the company appears trapped in a loop of corporate appeasement and brand damage control. With Iger set to step down in 2026, the chaos raises a haunting question. Who, if anyone, will be able to restore clarity and vision at the top? For generations, Disney was synonymous with wonder, imagination, and cultural relevance. The company didn't just entertain. It shaped childhoods, sparked dreams, and created enduring stories that transcended time. But as of 2025, that once unshakable magic seems to be fading. Some might blame changing audience tastes or the saturation of the content market. Much of Disney's decline feels internal. Bloated budgets, rushed production timelines, and an over-reliance on reboots and remakes have eroded the brand's creative integrity. No longer is the Disney name a guarantee of excellence. Where once fans eagerly anticipated each release, now they approach new projects with skepticism, or worse, indifference. Films like Elio and live-action remakes such as Snow White have been met with lukewarm reactions, if not outright backlash. Instead of delight, many of these titles trigger controversy, fatigue, or disappointment. The parks, too, once a beacon of escapism, are seeing cracks in the foundation. Budget cuts, staffing issues, and a perceived dip in experience quality have left even die-hard Disney loyalists questioning the value of a brand that once seemed untouchable. The real tragedy isn't just financial, it's emotional. The shrinking magic of Disney represents a deeper cultural loss, the dimming of a creative lighthouse that once stood proudly in entertainment. If the company doesn't recalibrate, the magic may not just be shrinking, it may vanish altogether. As Bob Iger prepares to step down from the helm of Disney in 2026, the looming question becomes, who will carry the torch, and will they reignite the magic or further dim it? Iger's once celebrated legacy has been heavily tarnished by divisive leadership, questionable creative direction, and deep financial missteps. But his departure won't automatically solve Disney's problems. It could just shift them. The challenge facing his successor is immense. They'll inherit a company entrenched in cost-cutting, struggling with brand fatigue, and fractured internally by ideological rifts. Many wonder if the board will choose a safe insider who continues Iger's strategies, or opt for an outsider with a mandate to disrupt and rebuild. Either choice comes with risks. Stay the course and risk stagnation, or shake things up and risk further instability. The next CEO will also have to address damaged relationships with fans, employees, and shareholders alike. Confidence in Disney's leadership is fragile, and trust has been eroded over years of layoffs, over-budget projects, and what critics call performative prioritization of politics over quality storytelling. In truth, the post-Iger Disney era could define whether the company reclaims its identity or loses it entirely. The world is watching, not just for who will lead next, but whether there's still something left worth leading. The long-rumored exit of Kathleen Kennedy from her role as president of Lucasfilm marks a symbolic and strategic shift in the final chapter of Bob Iger's tenure. Kennedy, once celebrated for steering the Star Wars franchise into the modern era, has become one of the most polarizing figures in Disney's executive ranks. Her departure isn't just about one person leaving. It signals a broader reckoning with Disney. Recent failures, especially in how the company has handled beloved franchises. Under Kennedy's leadership, Lucasfilm delivered some commercial wins, but also alienated a large portion of the fan base with controversial creative decisions and an inconsistent brand direction. A backlash surrounding shows like The Acolyte and the waning enthusiasm for Disney-era Star Wars films made her exit increasingly inevitable. Yet it comes not as a clean slate moment, but as part of a final wave of shakeups under Iger's cost containment program. In tandem with Kennedy's departure, Disney is tightening budgets at Marvel, cutting staff at Pixar, and pulling the plug on underperforming projects across Disney+. These shakeups may be financially driven, but they also reflect a deep crisis of confidence within the company's creative core. With Iger's own exit approaching, these last-ditch efforts seem more about optics than transformation. Attempts to convince shareholders that reform is possible. As the foundation continues to crack, what remains is a creative vacuum and a leadership void, both of which Disney must now figure out how to fill. Disney, once the gold standard of imagination and excellence, now finds itself fractured, pulled between financial pressures, ideological agendas, and a disillusioned fan base. Bob Iger's legacy, once pristine, is now defined by cost-cutting chaos, misfires, and mass layoffs. As key leaders exit and projects shrink, the company feels less like a united creative force and more like a corporation struggling to remember what made it magical in the first place. Subscribe for more updates on Disney, Hollywood shakeups, and industry news. Comment below. Do you think Disney can recover, or is the magic gone for good? Like if you agree, and share this with fellow fans who are watching the collapse unfold.